Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of HR Nightmares. If you like what you're hearing on any or all of these episodes, make sure that you're hitting subscribe and you're following us on YouTube and anywhere that you listen to your podcast. This is going to be a fun day. We got like a lot to cover. So I'm Lisa Leath, and I'm the Chief People Officer at Vanica, also the founder of Leath HR Group. And I'm here with the OGs. You want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Beth Looney.
Amy Conway.
And we have a really special guest. This is a longtime friend of mine, Rebecka Reibe, and she has become this really successful immigration attorney with Ogletree Deakins out in Raleigh, North Carolina. And this is such an awesome, timely conversation that we're having with you, smart lady, because nobody really understands that there's like this lottery coming up in March. And so we want to understand all the ins and outs and things, not just from an HR perspective, but also like if we have employees listening and they're having to like, there's lots of open roles around them and they're like banging their head. Why doesn't my manager find somebody to like work? I'm having to do all this extra work. Or you're a manager listening and you're thinking, I can't fill specific roles. There's this whole talent pool out there of people who want to work. And they just need a visa. So you're going to help us through that process. But why don't you introduce yourself and give us your background on how you got into immigration in the first place?
So I'm Rebecka Reibe, as Lisa mentioned, and we actually met when I was her kid's teacher. So that was my kind of first step in life after I graduated from UNC Chapel Hill. Then went on to go to law school at UNC Chapel Hill as well. And since my second year in law school, I've actually been working for Ogletree Deakins. So I've been there ever since I graduated, and just really enjoying the diversity that the immigration field has to offer. Like, it's so much fun. You get these little wins every day. You're helping people kind of realize their dream and either get their work authorization for the first time or just kind of keep working with the company that they've been with for a while. So super rewarding. And as Lisa mentioned, this is a super relevant season right now because the H-1B lottery is coming up, which is the one time a year that employers can petition for brand new H-1B visas for employees or potential employees.
Okay, before we get into all like the serious stuff, can you just tell us how like your personal background with immigration and where you were born and how you got here?
Oh, yes. So yeah, I definitely... There's a reason I had an interest in immigration law and kind of went into that. So I was actually born in Sweden. My whole family, going way back, is all Swedish. We initially moved to the U.S., to California, when I was 3 and my dad came on an H-1B visa, which is what we will be talking about today.
Cool.
So I was on a H-4 visa, which is the dependent that can come along with the H-1B. And he worked for a company in California for about 5 years. And then we decided it was time to move back. Spent my kind of middle high school years in Sweden and then moved back here to Wilmington on basically during my senior year of high school. So November, my senior year of high school, which was...
That's
That's really tough.
Oh my gosh.
Not just like moving to a different
Socially, it's
state, but like a whole nother country.
New country.
Exactly. New
culture.
country, new culture, new high school, my senior year. So I joined right after Thanksgiving break.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, in the middle of the year?
In the middle of the year.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
The new kid.
But yeah, I really thought it was so special how when we were going through that process for the second time, we came on an H-1B again, how the immigration attorney at that time helped us understand, as well as 5 years later when we started applying for the green card, which you can do from an H-1B because it's a dual intent visa. The same thing, the immigration attorney was very attentive and explained the process to us. And it's just something that I thought like, oh, that's an interesting job. And I don't think it was until I actually was like through my first year in law school that I realized like, oh, this is a path I can take that seems interesting. So I just happened to go to the career fair one night and meet one of it's actually funny, I sit in her office now because she went on to bigger, better things. And so we were super sad to have lost her, but funnily enough, I ended up getting her same office, and she kind of introduced me to Ogletree and connected me to the right people, and got to do my my 2L summer there and have stayed with the same team ever since, and worked part-time through law school, through the end of law school, and then came on full-time as soon as I could.
That's great.
And just been going ever since. So it just kind of organically happened for me, and I think that knowing what it's like to go through it really helps me connect with some of the beneficiaries that are having to go through it themselves.
Well, just having that personal experience, I would think you just are able to provide them with a lot of empathy and understanding of just the process can be long and drawn out, and it could be stressful sometimes when deadlines are coming.
gosh, yeah.
And
You want to stay in a country.
Yeah.
And, like, they could potentially kick you out.
Yes,
Yeah.
and we do this every day, and we see case after case, and it become a little detached, because for us it's the next petition, the next this. So it's great to have that reminder, like when you're talking to them, like, hey, I understand what you're going through, and we all do, but especially, like, I love that I can really relate to them and even tell them my story and make them just feel comfortable that, I know it's frustrating. I know it sucks when USCIS lost your petition and we can't do anything about it because they're not answering our emails. But, like, I promise you, yeah. So there's a lot of formalities and a lot of governmental mishmash that you have to navigate, which can be super frustrating. We can handle a lot of it because we do this every day, and we know the loopholes to find someone to contact, and we have all those resources available to us, which does make it better. But definitely it's easy to get frustrated when, it's like, hey, this has a 2-year processing time. Like, you just have to wait. So
Back in the day, I had a company long ago, and we hired H-1B visa folks for engineering, and we thought we could handle it by ourselves. The application is like, yay, hi. And so we hired an attorney. So is that your advice, if you're thinking about that, to not do it alone and really get some legal counsel?
Absolutely. So one reason a lot of people are afraid to even go into this area of sponsoring employees, whether it's H-1B or any other employee, is because it is complex. It's a complex application. There's a lot of specific things that have to be put correctly in the application, and that can be hard to do if you're doing it alone. When you seek support from attorneys like us, we do this every day, so we know exactly what fields on the form have to be filled out, what fields can we skip. What evidence do we have to provide? What evidence can we skip? Really, when you go on and you look and you try to do this yourself, you're going to find the forms that you need to fill out, but you're going to find very little information, at least from USCIS, on what evidence you should be accompanying with the form to be successful on the first try. Sure, there's forums where everybody's giving their opinion of what they did.
But it's not legal advice.
Exactly.
Which, speaking of, before we pepper you with a million questions, you want to give a disclaimer?
Yes. Just, to be clear, we're here to educate about the H-1B process, as well as, just having a robust immigration program for your company in general. None of this should be taken specifically as legal advice for your company or your employees. If you do have an employee that you identify, I think, could benefit from some of this, I do ask you or encourage you to seek out legal counsel. And if you want to contact me and Ogletree, we'd be happy to help you out.
Yeah, and we'll make sure to put all your contact information, and we'll talk about your contact information at the end of the episode, and we'll pump it out there with all our social posts of this episode. But great.
Yeah. With anything we talk about.
Yeah, this is just advice.
Yes.
Do not take it all.
And it's super free.
Yeah.
And
free.
super good.
It's super good.
Contact an expert.
So one thing I was surprised going through that process long ago was the fact that the government sets the wage. So that was a real hard thing for us. So we had our engineers making a certain amount of money, and it was lower than what the government stipulated that we could not hire for. So we had to change everybody's salary. The people that worked there were like, woohoo, we're on more H-1Bs.
Right.
And they were like, this is great, a big raise. So can you explain a little bit about that, about the setting the wage? Because I thought that was really surprising, and it was another cost that we didn't factor in when we were deciding to bring on somebody.
Absolutely. Yes. So to get an H-1B, the employee does have to be making what's called a prevailing wage in their area. So generally they're divided into areas. It's usually you can kind of count by county. Sometimes it's a little more complex, especially if you're getting up to like New York City and stuff, where where it's really densely populated. But there's basically a registry of all these areas that have their unique prevailing wages, and there's 4 levels. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and basically level 1 is entry level. You are, assisting, you're still learning. Up to level 4, you're managing. You're really kind of risen to the top experience in your field, and you should be paid that way as well. So the reason this exists is because the U.S. government didn't want the H-1B visas being used to try to hire cheaper labor by using foreign labor. So they wanted to both be kind to the foreigners, and they should be paid for the work they're doing at the same rate as anyone else, as well as they wanted to protect American workers getting the jobs and not handing those out to someone else at a low wage just because they'll accept it because they
Like
get
a
to stay in the
loophole
country.
to be
Exactly.
like, come on, and then all of a sudden your labor cost. Yeah,
Exactly.
That's actually a good safeguard, to be honest.
Yeah.
So-
And there's many places that have, I don't know that much about our system. I worked for a company for a long time. We didn't do a lot of sponsorships, but we had stores in Canada. So we dealt with Canadian laws, and theirs was one like, you have to prove that there's not a Canadian citizen who could do that job as equally good before we sent someone up there. Like when we were opening those stores, we couldn't just take all of our people up there and put them in stores, which is usually how we open stores in the States.
Yeah, because they know what they're doing.
Correct.
And they know the
we
brand
had
and
to literally make a case. So there were specific jobs that were like, no, we do need to bring someone in to do this. But for the most part,
So that exact
and
process,
it was the same thing to protect kind of Canadian workers because the wages are different. And,
Even though it's an American-based company, you then have to follow. That's
you have to
interesting. I didn't know
follow,
that.
wherever you are, you have to follow the laws of where you're located.
Interesting.
Right?
Yeah, and the U.S. has that same process, or very similar, the same idea for permanent residency, for certain types of permanent residency, for basically specialized workers who have like a bachelor's degree or just skilled workers. You do have to go through it's a permanent labor certification process. It's called PERM for short, and you do a labor test. So you run recruitment for the role to show that there is no American in this area willing to do this job at this wage, and that's why we're hiring this person. So very similar process that we have, but it is in the immigrant visa kind of scenario rather than this H-1B non-immigrant.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, so my main question I always have is is there a certain country that people are more likely to get a visa from? Like, if I'm from India, am I screwed? Or if I'm from Canada, am I good? Like, which countries are there preferred countries, or which one's the easiest
I
to
could
get a visa
write you a dissertation on this.
Okay.
So for H-1Bs, the short answer is no. There's a quota each year, and that's why we have this lottery that I'm sure we'll get into. And so there's 65,000 H-1B visas available, with an extra 20,000 available for those with U.S. master's degrees. So that quota is the same no matter where you are from.
When was the last time that changed?
I believe it was early 2000s. There was a period in the late 20th century, early 2000s, where it actually went up for a little bit through the American Competitiveness and Labor Act. If I'm saying that right.
That's fine.
We trust that you're correct.
Don't check it. It sounds right.
Nobody listening is going to Google
Yeah,
it.
it's okay.
Yeah. So it went up for a while to over 100,000, and then came back down again. So it's been like that for quite a while. I think maybe 2014 or so, 10 years or so, it's been at that same level. And the H-1B lottery, this new kind of newish quota lottery that they've been implementing, has only been in place, I believe, since 2013. So actually, when I came here with my dad on his H-1B, we did not take part in the lottery because it was the last year that they didn't do the lottery before. So it was fiscal year 2013 that we came. And at that point, you just had to file it as soon as the filing window opened. And if you were the first, either 65 or the extra 20 to file, then you got it.
You were good to go.
But I think they realized because the filing, the window they had, they would basically track when they met the quota. So a couple years prior to early 2000s, taking maybe 2 months to meet the quota. And then it was taking a month and a half. And then it was taking a month. And then I think 2012, it took a week and a half. So my guess is, you know, that they realized like, okay, eventually we're going to get every single case on day one of opening the filing window. And that's not going to be, we can't figure out, you know, everyone mailed it on day one, who gets it. So they started this lottery, which has also kind of progressed into, it used to be you filed your entire petition and you get selected or you don't. Now they've actually moved over to a pre-registration system, so you don't have to give quite as much info, and you don't have to file a whole petition. I think we had to do the whole petition before. Yeah. Yeah. I believe the registration has only been around for about 3 or 4 years now, so it's fairly new.
I think a good question would be, I mean, this might not be your expertise, but maybe we can decide. But so if we're thinking about doing this, like, why would it be important for us to look, you know, to foreign countries for some of those workers? Like, what do you think some of the benefits would be for that?
Well, I think some of the benefits are that right now the labor market, there just aren't enough American workers in specialized occupations. I know Lisa's shared some stats with me that I thought were super interesting, but there's just, if you're hiring, you're looking for skilled workers, especially in engineering and data and software and stuff like that, there just aren't enough people to fill the roles. And so you have people that might already be in the country looking for jobs, and then they might be a perfect fit for your company, but just because you don't know the visa process and you're not offering it, you're missing out on that talent.
Yeah, it was just interesting when you said the number, and when you think about it, you know, 65 plus another 20. I mean, that is not a lot of individuals.
And that's all they've been taking for 20 years.
During the Great Resignation, like 1.4 million people a month were like quitting jobs, and we've got 80,000. So,
well, just where we're sitting in New Hanover County, North Carolina, I think this is what we were talking about. I had recently heard from a regional economist that said if you took every body, like literally every human that was of working age and capable, and stuck them in every open role in New Hanover County, you still would have something like, what did I tell you? It was like thousands, tens of thousands of openings
open
still.
Jobs.
So we just, there's a lot of openings. We can't get them filled. And these are people who want to work and they want to live the American dream. So
it was such a rewarding thing for us to do. I'm talking so much about me, but sorry.
No, it was it's great.
It was so amazing. So the person that we hired was an engineer, and he's Romanian. Now is an American because we sponsored his green card. So that was really just a huge heart mush. But he came with such experience. The engineering degree that he had was like worth a PhD level, and it was just his bachelor's. And then he went on to get further education. He was probably one of the smartest people I've ever met. And so he came over, and it was just such a great experience that we then opened it up to other engineering folks, and we did some people from the Philippines. And it was just a really cool experience. Like, it was just really fun and cool.
Yeah, and then just finding candidates, too. Like, there have been studies made. People are Googling companies in Wilmington or companies in Raleigh that sponsor visas because they're already maybe here on an H-1B, and they are unhappy with their job. They don't feel like they're valued, and they want to switch.
Because they'll have to go home if they don't get something.
Exactly. So they want to switch their job, but you know they need to transfer their visa. And by the way, if it's an individual that already has an H-1B and has been counted in the lottery once, you don't have to go through the lottery again. We can have that visa transferred if you use premium processing, which is a service that USAS offers for an additional fee. That brings it down to a 15-day USAS processing time. So it's also not necessarily a lengthy process to get someone who maybe is working for a different company or an H-1B to come join your company. And again, because their visa is or their status in the U.S. is tied to your company, they're only going to look at your company, accept the job if they're interested in staying with you long term. No, they're not going to come and then quit after a week or a month.
It's a huge investment.
They're only going to accept that position if they feel like this is a company I want to work with. I want them to sponsor me, and I want to build a long-term relationship with them, just because of the nature of how your H-1B visa is tied to that company.
But, I mean, let's be honest. It's not really that much money. I see what y'all out there are spending on, like, sign-on bonuses. For Christ's sake, like, the Burger King on Market Street is paying $500.
Yeah.
So, like,
I mean,
how much is this
miscellaneous, like employee lunches? Sometimes I'm like, how much
this
do
is
we spend on
pure
that today?
silliness.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like, how much are we going to spend on this?
I think
Let's
sometimes
do
it's
it.
less about the money and more about the hoops and the paperwork. And do they have someone internally that can like take on that process, right? So we have a lot of companies in town that are smaller companies that maybe need our help. But smaller companies, mid-sized companies, they only have, so many resources internally. If they feel like this is a huge process and undertaking, it just feels like another process, and maybe they don't know enough about it, and it just feels
Or
like
just
they
seems
can't
so
do it.
daunting and
So I think that's
time-consuming.
what we can help is kind of break it down so it doesn't feel like that overwhelming of a process. And also with anything, it takes, some time up front, but then we know how to do it, we understand it, and we get a really positive outcome with this wonderful employee who's
Heck yeah.
successful in our company, and we fill a gap of skill that we needed. So I think sometimes it's about the lack of education around what the process looks like.
So how much is it going to cost, and how are you going to help us make it easy?
Easy. No, it really, it becomes easy because we do this every day. Like, we turn these out and obviously give each of them the
turn them out. Okay.
give them each the attention they need. But ultimately, we're doing this so much that for us, we know exactly, we look at your company and your employee and know exactly how to tailor this petition so that it has the best chance of success. And the base USCIS filing fee for an H-1B is only $460. Now, depending on the company and whether this is the first H-1B the company is getting for the employee, there's it's called the ACWIA fee. It's basically an administrative USCIS fee that can range up to $1,500, but it also gets less if you have fewer employees. There's a whole list of exceptions. So we kind of look into that for you. There's also a fraud prevention fee of $500 that gets added, but that's really only it for the filing fees.
So we're at
And
like
then-
$3,000 plus
$2,500.
attorney's fees.
Some
Yeah,
attorneys
and then
Exactly.
fees.
So what you would look at, with regular processing, the kicker is the premium processing, which is an additional $2,500 to USAS. That has been $2,500 for forever. But yeah, without that, so you can add $2,500 on, but you're looking at maybe about $6,000 for an H-1B that lasts you 3 years.
I mean,
It's a no-brainer.
to get
Plus,
a
also,
great
it's-
employee that
it's-
can do the specialty role.
And for a specialty role, it was just the best thing that we did, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it's
exciting.
an
And then also
investment
it's
for
cool,
sure.
too, to
Yeah.
kind of, broaden the base and get some international people in. And
Yeah.
Yeah,
It
to
was really
diversify your
fun.
workforce
Yeah.
a little bit,
it was
right?
it was really super rewarding. So
Yeah, and what was I going to say? The prevailing wage that you were mentioning that can add a cost. It can, but most or usually the prevailing wage it's set to be kind of the average wage that is paid for the
Right.
for the
Yeah.
incoming and
It's like
rising
time
levels.
to do some comp benchmarking
Well,
and see
that's
what we were
what I mean.
actually
Undercutters.
paying our
this was my
people.
ex-husband and I was like, we're not
Yeah.
and then finally got the
Yeah.
to unleash it. So
So it's actually
Yeah.
funny because I was hanging out with my sister this morning and I was like, "Do you want to look up your prevailing wage?" So we looked hers up for both her jobs, and
is she added at least?
she was at one of them and then under on the other. But her job, she's a student still in their part-time job, so it's
Okay.
a little different. But it was funny.
That's a kind of fun book to have.
That's fun.
I want to go through that.
Yeah, no, it's just
Buy her
yeah.
a drink. She'll
Those
open
of
up
you
the prevailing
listening to
wage.
this podcast,
Do you want to know what?
don't come to me next
just
week
like
and ask about your
flip it over.
prevailing wage.
Yeah.
No, it's actually very fascinating. So the Department of Labor has basically created codes for every thinkable job. I mean,
I was wondering about that. Like, are they
Yeah.
all there?
They're pretty much all there.
Okay.
And then if it's not there, there's like an engineering all other or
Mhm.
like
That's what
You
we
know,
were.
yeah.
Engineering all other. I
All
was
other.
like, oh, crap.
yeah, it's called an umbrella code to just kind of cover anything that's
Yeah.
not there. But I mean, like for example, my sister, she works for a boutique and she does their online sales. Like she records them and then packages them and ships them out. And there was literally a code that was like inventory and sales clerk or shipping clerks, and the job duties were like her to a T.
Oh, okay.
And so they get specific.
That's
Okay.
kind of cool.
And so that's another service we do when we prepare an H-1B petition for someone is we look at the job duties. Like really to initiate this process, all we get from the employer is the wage, the job duties, the employee's CV. Like, that's about it. And then we kind of go from there and look at, okay, what's the prevailing wage? To do that, we have to figure out what job code is this. We look at the job description. We know most of these codes off the top of our head. Like, this is going to be that. It's pretty rare that there's a job that stumps us that we need to like go looking for. And then so we look at the prevailing wage and we say, you know what, you're all good to go. Like, they have the related degree they need. They have the prevailing wages met. Like, this is going to be a solid H-1B case. Or we'll come back and say, hey, you need to pay him. Like in Beth's case, you need to pay him a little more. And then you'll be good to go.
Yeah.
Let me play something back to you, and you can say yes or no, I got it. So you can sponsor somebody that already has an H-1B anytime throughout the year. But if someone needs a new H-1B, now's the time to open your hard-to-fill roles and say, I'll sponsor somebody because we got to get that person in the mix for the lottery, for those 65,000 plus 20,000 if they got a master's degree in the U.S. For those H-1B visas right now.
Right now.
Open your roles. If you got hard-to-fill roles, post them and say on LinkedIn, like there's a checkbox, right? That says, like, I will accept people that require sponsorships.
Yep.
So open it up. Let's try it. And call Rebecca.
And again,
you got to get an
just because
attorney.
you check that box doesn't mean you're obligated to sponsor them. So
Yeah.
it's
Right.
not-
It just means you're going to look at candidates who need that,
need
right? And
sponsorship.
consider them in the
Exactly.
mix. Yeah.
Exactly. So yes, that's correct. For someone who already has an H-1B, except in very rare cases where perhaps their H-1B didn't go through the cap. So it was, for example, nonprofit entities. Some of them are exempt from the cap. But as long as your employee has an H-1B that has been counted against the cap sometime in the past couple of years, they can transfer that to you without going through the lottery process. For an employee who is maybe on a different type of visa already in the U.S. or someone coming just from abroad who has not come to the U.S. in a status yet, you do have to go through the H-1B quota lottery. And lucky for us, it's coming up. So the registration period is March 1st through March 17th. So it is coming up quickly.
So it's really coming up.
Yes. Luckily, the registration for the lottery is super simple nowadays. They've really kind of optimized it. There's very little information, kind of what I mentioned earlier, job descriptions, kind of the credentials of the employee, the offered wage, and then what happens is the company makes an account, super easy account. It's like password security questions, no info or anything needed about your company. We make an account. We put in all the info about your company that you send through us through a questionnaire. We submit the registration. It's a fairly simple process. In late March, beginning of April, USAA will announce who was selected in the lottery.
That's pretty quick.
Yes. Yeah. So
what happens if you don't get selected?
if you don't get selected, that's when it really is. It comes, case by case basis. So if it's someone who's not here on a visa yet, they either have to wait and try again next year, or we can look into other types of visas. It's alphabet soup. There's like A through Z of different visas. And so yeah, we don't just do H-1Bs. We do very many, and that's something we can offer. You just kind of give us, here's our candidate, here's the job. What visa can they get?
Help.
And kind of going back to what Lisa was asking earlier too, there are special visas that only Canadians, Mexicans, Australians. There's special H-1B1 visas for Chilean and Singaporean citizens. So there's all
Like,
Like that seems
It's
a
just
little like
different
I
places
know.
that the U.S. government has
little bit
made.
random.
Canada, Mexico, you
immigration
kind of
law.
get because
Yeah.
we share land. But
Yeah.
like the others,
yeah.
Somebody negotiated
Australian.
something along the way.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, and then I could keep naming different scenarios of when you could get a different type of visa that you might not even realize. Like, oh, your company is ultimately owned by a Spanish owner, then you can get an E. Like, great news.
Look at this. This is why you need to hire the professional.
Right.
Yeah.
You know this right away. That's
exactly.
amazing.
So, I've completely lost track of what I was, where I started.
No,
We're just
I
so
think
like,
it's
wow,
all
the
good.
countries. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Well, there's just
Um,
so many nuances to it. It shows, I said I have no expertise in this area. If a company asked me how we go about this, I would have to phone several friends.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not something I've really dealt with. It sounds like, Beth, you've dealt with it a little bit. But that is so important just to I think our HR folks that are out there listening, if this is something you're interested in, an option, it's like just go research and get more information about it and like find an expert, right? Like
Yeah.
Rebecka
Call
or
Rebecka.
someone in that field that can really help you with that.
And it's such a smart idea because it opens up the likelihood of filling those roles, especially those hard to fill roles.
Hell yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like it's a great option, you know?
Well, let's talk about this. We've got a lot of furniture manufacturers, food processing plants, like agriculture related industries and plants. And damn, I can't even find a software engineer. I can't find somebody to slice up a bunch of smoked, salmon in a food processing plant.
Sweet potatoes.
Sweet potatoes, and the biggest sweet potatoes. Inside joke, I guess. But how can the visa process help, industries that really struggle to find Americans who are here, but maybe if you could bring in some other talent, like how can we use the visa process to fill some roles on the front lines?
Yeah, so there's a couple visas that are more fit for those kinds of roles. It might not be necessarily H-1B that's the best fit, because again, I don't know if I ever made this clear, but the H-1B, the biggest crux of that one is that the duties of the role to be reasonably performed need to require a bachelor's degree in a related field. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what you're having to prove to the government. So for other roles where maybe that's not a good fit, there's, for example, a special type of visa for seasonal agricultural workers.
Mm-hmm.
So that can be a fit. There's visas for trainees to come, for interns, for researchers, for scholars. I mean, there's really endless opportunities. And if you have, this need, that's kind of what we specialize in. You come and you tell us your need, you tell us what you need to fill it, and we, usually will know right off the top of our head, this type of visa is what we're going to look into.
So for something like that, for agricultural big job fill, would the employer need to know the actual people coming? Or is that something that you can help them with to try to find some folks, or they have to know the people?
They don't necessarily have to. Obviously, to petition for them, they would have to have identified them.
Okay.
But I would recommend, if they're trying to fill roles, using that we will sponsor, or we will consider sponsoring for work authorization is a great start. Because again, you're not obligated just because you say you're willing or you will, like you're not obligated to do that just because you're putting it in a job ad. But if you do put it in the job ad, that opens up the opportunity that people are going to come to you that need sponsorship. Because frankly, like I said earlier, like these people are looking for employers that will sponsor them, and they might just ignore your job description if it doesn't include details about sponsorship, because they just, they think they're going to reach out and you're going to say, no, we're not sponsoring.
That just seems like a huge way for someone to make like a Match.com.
Yeah.
Seriously, like, get on it.
Hey, if you're here illegally, come to this job fair at the church, and we'll have Rebecka, who's going to help us process a bunch of applications.
Yeah.
Hey, what about, so for those sort of seasonal agriculture workers, how much do those applications, are those cheaper? Are they sort of the same per person? Can I get mass? Can I apply for mass
BOGO.
visas? Yeah, I'd like a BOGO.
Right.
Will immigration issue me BOGOs?
They're about, I would say only the visas that really go up in price, which we're still only talking maybe $10K max, are the visas that are for extraordinary scientists or extraordinary businessmen, where they just have a high evidentiary burden. So the legal fee just goes up because we're spending, instead of spending X amount of hours, we're spending triple the time, really tailoring your application to show that you are, because the criteria for this is showing that you are truly extraordinary and have made novel discoveries to your field, and you are like...
That would make you feel really good.
Hell yeah.
Yes,
if you get approved.
They're very fun to work
Did your dad
with.
get one of those?
He did not. He just got an H-1B.
Not extraordinary.
Not extraordinary. I'm
Well,
sorry.
we do try to, because they are more expensive and they have such a high evidentiary burden, we try to avoid them unless we need to use them.
Gotcha.
But we only, the ones we pursue are usually successful.
That'd be a great thing to add to your resume.
yeah.
I'm
I'm
extraordinary.
an extraordinary,
visa.
yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
That's awesome.
So other than that, I mean, most of them range in that same same price range, but again, it will also be very specific to, like, if you have a particularly complicated situation, there can be added fees and such. But the the range we're talking is still usually under 10K, and that gets you usually a 3-year kind of stint. Most visas you can extend either for 2 or 3 years, and it's a lot that goes into it. But
It may be a really good option for those companies.
Yeah, but I mean, how wonderful that you could get someone to commit in a role like that, like I don't know.
Yeah,
Those are
3
really
years,
hard. I
that would
mean,
be-
3 years. Wow.
well, yes, and to be clear, as an employer, if you get someone an H-1B visa or a L visa or a J visa for 1, 2, or 3 or 5 years, you have no obligation to hire them for that long, and they have no obligation to work for you for that long. That is just the max that the government will issue it for.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But you would still treat them as a normal employee if they're underperforming or if they choose to resign, all of those things still maintain.
Exactly.
Okay.
The only the one obligation, not the one, but the most kind of tangible one for an H-1B specifically, you do have an obligation if you do terminate the employee, you just have to pay for their flight back to their last country of residence.
That, I guess
That seems fair.
visa etiquette.
It's part of your severance. Part of the severance package is your
Yeah.
flight home.
Yeah.
I'm breaking up with you, but I'll
Yeah.
send you in
I'll
a
send you
cab.
home.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
So,
We had a couple of questions. Actually, we had a lot of questions for you. But here's somebody who was asking. We get audience ratings here. And we've answered one of those about how many visas. We know about that. Specialty occupation. Anything else to add on what is meant by the term specialty occupation?
basically just that it requires a bachelor's degree in a related field. Does that mean that if you 3 weeks ago hired someone with an unrelated bachelor's degree but some experience, does that mean you can't use that position as an H-1B role? No. We just have to prove that the standard kind of knowledge needed to perform the role, perform the duties of the role, is a bachelor's degree in a related field. Mm-hmm. Now, if you can have an unrelated degree and have X amount of years of experience, and that can kind of be evaluated to be equivalent to that. So it's more flexible than it may seem. Like, it has to require a related degree. But that's kind of like the formal
But you're an expert in teeing that up.
Yeah.
This is a good one. How can businesses give internships to students with 18-month visas? What does that process look like for the business, and is there a lottery for that as well?
Oh, yeah. So internships, usually the J visa is perfect for those. There's a J visa that has an intern category, and even a trainee category. The intern is only a year, I believe, and the trainee is 18 months, maybe switched. But both of those, a fairly simple process. So what happens then is we work with the company, but then we also work with something called a J visa sponsor, which they're kind of flagged by the government to issue this form called DS 2019, which is what you need to get the J visa. So they're, I guess, kind of like they work with the government and represent the government, but they're not a governmental entity. So we work with them. Fairly easy application process. I think the most tedious part of that is you just need to include like a training intern plan for how they'll grow over, like how their duties will grow over that time and what they'll learn and who will help them learn. And other than that, it's a pretty simple process.
Isn't there an extension for STEM-related college kids?
Yes. So that one, if for students who have been on an, or who are on an F visa, and graduate, can get optional practical training, which is a year of work authorization.
Okay.
If you work in a STEM field, if your degree is in a STEM field, which there's a long list that USCIS has recognized as STEM fields, you're eligible up to 2 extra years of STEM OPT, which is optional practical training.
That's pretty good.
Yes.
That's really great.
Mhm.
So you could actually hire a student who just graduated, have them stay 3 years on OPT and STEM OPT, and have 3 chances at the H-1B lottery while
you
they're
go.
with you.
That's great.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, how about this one? This is fun. Free advice, okay? Disclaimer, it's free advice. If you want her real legal advice, you need to call Ogletree Deakins and ask for Rebecka Reibe
And pay
and
money.
pay her, okay? And if you want like really good, like other advice different than we're giving you, you can pay us too. Call Leath HR Group and we'd love to consult. But here's an interesting question. We have to terminate an employee on a H-1B visa.
Ooh.
We've given her support, PIP, job modifications, and nothing has worked. It's clearly time to move on. But I feel so terrible about it because I know it might affect her ability to stay in the country if she can't get sponsored by a new employer. Any tips? We kind of touched on this.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's hard.
Plane ride home.
Buy that
You gotta
train
get them
ticket.
a
You gotta
ride home.
send your first class.
Yeah.
Dang.
I mean,
Flying first class.
Sorry, that was really
Up in the
insensitive.
sky.
But
yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
you
it's the
go,
worst.
but-
It's one of the
yeah.
worst parts because we'll get even from our clients, they'll send us a list and they're like, hey, we need to terminate these 3 people. Can you please tell us the consequences for each one? And it's the worst part because you're like, telling them and you're thinking about this poor person who's on visa who's gonna get terminated and gonna have to figure out a different option. I will say generally, because I can't, advise on this specific one, but they will generally have 60 days after termination to find a new employer that will sponsor their H-1B.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say, I think the best thing a company could do, knowing that that's the case, is to build a timeline for that offboarding period. Maybe it's not you're terminated effective immediately, but it sounds like gave her a PIP, put them on the performance. It's like, okay, let's build a 30 to 60 day plan so that we can talk about your performance, choose an end date that feels good, pay them some severance out for a period of time while they find that. But maybe
Because then you could extend
here's
that for
what's
120
happening.
days.
We're going to keep you
Yeah.
on for 30 days, which is abnormal, but we want to give you kind of a little advanced time to start searching in addition to the 60 days that they might have. So there could be some timing things that an employer could do that we might not normally do if it was not that situation, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and there's of course so there are some additional things that go into that. For example, they have to have an I-94 covering the period. So this is when we get into the things where you really should contact an immigration attorney to see what time does this person actually have, because it could be that they actually aren't entitled to the 60 days. Most situations they would be though.
Yeah.
All right, almost the last question. So any tax implications we should be thinking about if we're like ready to go? We're going to sponsor some folks for these hard to fill jobs. Other things we should be thinking about tax-wise?
So this is the question we get all the time. And my team is not great at answering them. But luckily,
You're like, now you need to call an accountant.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
No,
You probably have
actually
tax
no,
attorneys.
because we work with someone else who's in our firm who just doesn't sit in our office, who specializes in like expat taxes and visa tax implications and stuff. So we pull him in, and he's great. It's just we're too like zoned in on the visa.
You're like, this
Getting
is my
here.
specialty. When you get over here, you gotta go to this guy.
I can
so
say
is
when
that
you.
for the company's tax.
It's
burden?
both.
Or it's for the individual.
It's usually it's the company's asking. And I can say usually I'm not aware of any huge implications of hiring a visa holder. Like you're going to treat them as any other employee. Usually the tax kind of questions occur more when you're sending employees abroad, or you're maybe so if you have them on U.S. payroll, they might still need a visa even though they're not physically in the U.S. And that's kind of when questions can arise. There's no major like red blinking light tax implications from just hiring like a visa sponsored employee.
So let's end this on a super positive note. Tell us the brief story of you becoming a U.S. citizen.
Oh yeah. So we moved here the latest time in 2012, was on an H-4 from my dad's H-1B for about 4 years, then went through the green card process. And I was actually about to age out. I had to go on an extra interview because I had already turned 21. Luckily, there's a provision that kind of tolls the age of children about to age out. So I got my green card. And then 5 years later, I was set to apply for my citizenship. And this is really an anecdote about how unpredictable USCIS is, because the citizenship that I have processed for some people and my mom and my dad's, they've taken about 9 months from start to the oath ceremony. Mine took a month.
Wow.
For no identifiable reason.
You were extraordinary.
Yeah.
You were extraordinary.
Yeah,
They
so,
knew it.
So no, it was super. So I submitted the application, got to go to the interview, got to take the oath. It was I didn't get the big grand oath ceremony because it was COVID. But I got a
Stinks.
link to Biden's video.
Okay.
Stinks.
So now.
So you're recent.
Yeah.
So that happened over. Congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's
So-
exciting.
It is. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I
It's
mean,
really
you've
great.
seen, like, since being a 3-year-old kid coming to the U.S. for the first time,
Mm.
being on several different dependent visas, and now being a Chapel Hill grad, an immigration attorney for one of the best immigration firms around. Congratulations to you. I'm super proud of you. It makes me want to
Thanks.
cry.
I know, it's really
Oh.
great.
It's really cool.
I know. I have to like kind of take a second sometimes and be like, I have my U.S. passport. Like I have, it's done. I don't have to worry about like visas expiring or anything like that. And that's why I love my job too, because I get to like help make that happen for other people too. So.
Any last
Aw.
minute thoughts?
No, thanks for all the education. I was
super
excited
advice.
on this one just to like learn. I didn't have any questions because I'm like, I don't know anything.
If you have any potential H-1B visa candidates, act fast because the registration opens March 1st.
Yeah.
So.
Open those hard to fill jobs, get them posted, let people know you're willing to sponsor. Get in touch with Rebecka Reibe. Tell them how to get in touch with you.
Yes. You can email me at rebecca.reibe@ogletreedeakins.com. I'm also on the Ogletree Deakins webpage. I have a LinkedIn.
Cool.
All the ways.
All the
ways.
ways. And make sure if you have any HR consulting needs that you're giving Leath HR Group a call. Check out Work Talk on worktalk.com. It's our very own proprietary HR technology employee engagement app. And thank you so much for tuning in. Rebecka, thanks for being here. And ladies, thank you as always.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right.